Good morning, afternoon. Welcome to the Savanna Circuit Tech, which is a moment of life, reflection, and forward movement for all of us at Savanna Circuit Technology. My name is Barry Okoth. I'm the operations manager at Savanna Circuit. Today, we are sharing what we've learned from the field and how we are scaling access to cold chain infrastructure in the hardest to reach rural value chains in Kenya. Before we dive in, a quick housekeeping notes. Please keep your microphone muted unless speaking. Use the Q&A chat box to send your questions, and kindly rename yourself with your full name and organization. So let's quickly run through the agenda for the day. So we have the agenda and outcomes, which will be taken through by Emma Stella. And then next we'll move to the opening remarks, which will be by our keynote speaker, Mr. Leo Blyth. Then we'll move on to the cold chain in the local context. We'll have Professor John Mburu, who will take us through. And after that, we'll have the Solar Tribe user video feedback. And from that, we'll go back to the project highlights, which will be taken through by Mary Njuguna and Emma Stella. Then we'll have a panel discussion, which will be moderated by Percy. Then from that, we'll move to the audience Q&A by Sami Karanja. Then we'll have the reflections and summary by Percy. So, and before we begin, allow me to officially introduce the company behind today's work, Savanna Circuit Technologies. So, who we are. Savanna Circuit is a Kenyan-born innovative company building decentralized solar-powered cold chain systems for rural Africa. With over 7,000 users and 11 registered innovations, we are solving for the last mile challenge of the perishable food system, where we have the dairy, fish, and beyond. So I'd like to introduce Emma Stella Gakuo. She's our COO, and she'll take it from there.
Yes, thank you very much, Barry, and welcome once again, everybody, to this particular convening. And we're very pleased to have each and every one of you here today. And today is a convening of voices and even lessons. And it is not just a pilot debrief, it is a showcase of a scalable model that is designed for rural women, for youth, and even the informal markets in mind, and as well as all the emerging markets. So today our goals are very simple. We want to share our field-tested learnings from our Solar Tribe initiative. We hope to inspire confidence and collaboration across all sectors, especially focusing on the cold chain and support of the ecosystem. We also hope to invite catalytic partnerships that are going to expand already what is working and also build strength on what is already going on. So we will start with a broader lens on cold chain innovation from one of our thought partners. So our keynote speaker our keynote speaker is a leading global voice in cold chain and productive use of energy. Leo Blyth is a senior energy consultant at the World Bank and has advised governments and businesses on clean energy transitions across the sub-Saharan Africa and across the different parts of the world. So Mr. Leo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Emma Stella and team. It's a real privilege to be here. And I'm here in my capacity where I've been working with the EST in Energy Saving Trust in the UK for the last 6 years as the co-partner for Efficiency for Access, where the organisation has really been leading the way in promoting low energy inclusive appliances, driving inclusive outcomes in energy access in rural areas. That's what we want to share with you today, some of the learnings of that work as they directly apply to Savanna Circuit. So thank you for this opportunity. If you could go ahead. So oh, thank you. Okay, there's been a little mix-up. This was I was planning to share an updated slide deck. I apologize. But anyway, okay. So we will. Would it be possible for me to share my screen, Emma Stella? That's okay with you?
Yes, Leo. Yes, that's perfect. Yeah.
Wonderful. I apologize for the inconvenience. Thank you. Great. Let's do that. You just bear with us, audience. Thank you. And if you kindly, I'm just going to send a request for that. Thanks. While that's coming through, so what we're just going to share with you, I was going to give a big background to the overall cold chain and show the relevance of the cold chain vis-a-vis different parts of the post-harvest food chain. But given the very short amount of time, just wanted to focus more on the actual role of the fund, where we have been able to, as EST and Efficiency for Access, where we've been able to support Savanna Circuit and many other grantees, as we like to relate to them. So this is the Efficiency for Access Research and Development Fund. It's been running for around 6 years now, where we've supported around 47 organizations. This is led by the co-program managers, Chris Beeland and my colleague, Kalina Stormuth-Darling, and who I'm actually standing in for, with Maka Renani and Neil Ogilvy, who've been doing all the heavy lifting and hard work. Just want to acknowledge them and say it's thanks to them all this is happening. And so we've now reached 18 organizations across sub-Saharan Africa, 5 across Asia, with approximately $10 million dispersed. Now, those of you working in development circles will be very familiar with these donor projects. The difference here is that this project is not only, well, so this project is supporting energy access, and that's quite typical, obviously, in our niche. But what's really different here is that this was supporting the gaps in early stage innovation, which many of the donor projects weren't able to. And that's largely thanks to our donors, the FCDO and IKEA Foundation, seeing that gap in the market and seeing a need for there to be, as we hear about innovation in the niche for appliances to serve rural populations, smallholder farmers, off-grid applications, because most of the appliances, of course, are either adapted for large Western markets or for middle-class markets in emerging economies. So that is maybe the largest theme, I think, of the day, is the need to innovate for specific purposes. We can move on to the next slide, then I'll go into the broad range of cooling appliances. Sorry, and it's me now. So what we now see, this is thanks to the Selco Foundation, who's been leading a lot of this work out of India. And this really demonstrates to you, like, look at the scope for innovation here. This is the full spectrum of cooling technologies. And many of these, what we call passive, not needing any energy, and others active, as you can see on the top bar, needing some form of energy. They work both to space cooling, to cool literally a area, or an application cooling produce, as in the case of Savanna Circuit. And most of us are focusing on cooling agricultural produce, fisheries, dairy, etc. I was fascinated when I discovered this, so I hope this can be a good reference to you. It really does show just the huge diversity of different technologies that exist. And very few of these have actually been modified, developed solely for these niches that we're working in. And so we're really at the early stages of that right now. So there's such great room for innovation. What I've highlighted here in blue are the areas where we're starting to see. Those are the areas where the companies are growing. We're seeing investment. We're seeing viable businesses driving these niche technologies for first mile rural applications. So I wanted to give a quick summary before going into some of the details here of where are we at with the agricultural cold chain sector. Now, obviously, there's a whole webinars on this topic, so I'm being very, very brief and quite superficial, therefore a bit blunt here. What I would say is agricultural cold chains for first mile for smallholder farmers. Sure, it's very attractive. It's got the high potential to increase revenues, reduce spoilage, improve food security and food safety, as well as climate resilience for rural communities. However, at the moment, we're seeing a wide variety of commercial and community business and financial models, right? And I think it's important to differentiate between business models and operational models here. We're seeing organizations which are really pushing for community-run approaches or public sector-run approaches. sure, we can call that a business model, but maybe it's simpler to just call it an operational model, because we don't always need to be profit making. And that could be one of the key points in this emerging sector yet. We haven't yet seen commercial viability of different links in the cold chain. However, no matter what we're seeing, we know that success must require this innovative tailoring of systems to your location and to the circumstances that are specific. And there's sadly been millions, tens of millions of dollars, whatever currency you like, but really we're talking about huge amounts of funds have been lost through what have been documented as white elephants. And there was a paper on this by the Wageningen Agriculture University and E4A documenting the extent of these. And typically it's because of the lack of innovation, the attempt to duplicate one solution, even from a continent to another. So I think innovation there is obviously proven as critical. However, if we take a step back, what I really wanted to emphasize is this is the time for innovation. Those of us who study deep history, you know, the Precambrian explosion, where there was just absolute explosion of life forms on Earth, which then later crashed down. I think we really have this explosion, which we saw in the off-grid sector about 10 years ago, and then narrowed down into a smaller group of market leaders. What we're now seeing is that with many companies right now, where we're seeing a diversity of different solutions across those cold chains. Moving on, one important way to differentiate in innovation is the difference between incremental or transformative innovation. I think, and we've learned that is incredibly important, and for organizations or funders to know what they are supporting. Sometimes an innovation is marketed or sold as being transformational, and it either is just simply rehashing an old solution with often nothing innovative about it at all, or it can be in the middle. So we have a great example which can be incredibly impactful, an incremental innovation moving from charcoal walled evaporative coolers to modern fabrics, and even maybe using some solar powered fans to accelerate, or solar powered water pumps to drip water through an evaporative cooler, but it's still an incremental innovation. Whereas transforming the exhaust heat on a van into a cooling condenser to cool the produce on a van is really transformative. We can have a look at how we'd rank the different innovations from Savanna Circuit, and I would say that we've got transformative innovations in the milk ATM, in finding new ways of creating the coolness. And I won't go into the last details here, but just wanted to emphasize, of course, that innovation, we're often drawn to talk about technology for innovation, but really innovation covers everything and is needed to, across the actual business models, the business operations, which I'll go into a little depth on in the next slide. But of course, even in terms of customer interactions, as we know, mobile phones and talking to a customer through a phone is innovative and transformative. How can we use new finance mechanisms, particularly for governments and donors? We might touch on that later. And one thing I think the development community has yet to pick up on, and we're looking at in E4A, is how we could innovate with end user impact. Could the same devices that are chilling produce also chill the farmers? Could the produce of ice packs be used to chill market vendors who are selling the produce? Even students in schools, can they be cooled by ice packs or by thermal cooling, by fridges that are currently only used for cooling food? So lots of room for innovation is the key point. I'll move through this quickly because I'm aware of time. Just giving a quick example, we generally say there are 4 different financial business models in the cold chain. And the 2 I've highlighted here, different ways of paying over time, are seen as the most innovative. Whereas you pay as you go, where you own an asset with a deposit and then you pay for it over time, normally for a fridge or a freezer, a smaller unit. Whereas pay as you store, then that could also be the same as the Savanna Circuit model of paying as you use, as you decant the cooling liquids. You can either put your produce in a room and pay for that storage, or you could decant the cooling liquid. Both very innovative ways that have really been completely transformative for the sector. Want to give an example of how does this apply to Savanna Circuit as a third party, as we're looking here to build links. Truly, this mixture of a homegrown leadership with a global partnership. This all began, I think I'm right, about 6-7 years ago, with partnership with the Hottenheim University in Germany, with one of the founders there, which has begun his own solar company, Solar Cooling Engineering, now Self-Chill, testing out chilling for dairy. And since then, the donor funds ran out. I'm talking a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but as we know in the development sector, this is true. You know, the overseas partners, they leave. But here we are now, 7 years later, with Savanna Circuit being a successful entrepreneurial business that stayed, succeeded through the test of time. Both admirable and showing the true grit, which is always one of the main things for a company, but also the actual nature of innovation we're here to talk about today. It's within this concept of adaptive feedback loop, continuous learning, where the designs have evolved. They haven't been jumping around from one idea to another, one sector to another. There's really an evolution of the technology and the business models that has led to a world-class innovation that just needs to be recognized and a bit more time and support to grow. And I think that's largely because of acknowledging what we see here as these cross-sectoral drivers of success. One needs to recognize that there's an ecosystem. And I won't go into the details here. This is actually a slide that we borrowed through the close partnership with the World Bank Group and IFRE and SMAP, where we've been working together in Kenya in the past on a cold chain stakeholders workshop, where we looked at together how one can inform policy through learning from experience. And so just look here, these are all of the 10 different elements one can see are parts of a necessary foundation to have a successful ecosystem for sustainable cold chain. And all of these, again, have room for innovation. And I would say it's through working on multiple levels of this that Savanna Circuit has been succeeding. And we'll get to hear about some of these later. And I'll just wrap up now. I've just summarized this point about how critical, and can't go over this enough. This is really one of the key points, that fragmented project-based drop-in solutions are great to show a technology, but not to prove anything beyond that. And in fact, if lessons aren't learned, then different donors, different projects just keep proving the same thing time and time again and not going beyond that. So we need to go beyond this. So these solutions do need fine-tuning, and these lessons learned may have begun to be learned. They're only still very new, but they haven't been widely circulated, leave alone incorporated into best practices. There are very few companies and institutions who know this through experience, and we need to be wary of newcomers popping up, taking others' ideas, packaging it nicely, getting, again, more attention, and beginning the cycle again. It's a good point with innovation. Maybe we can innovate on driving the car or getting to a destination rather than reinventing the wheel. And so consequently, these different models do exist at different stages of development in different value chains, which I haven't had the chance to emphasize, but just to say that the fisheries and the dairy value chains have received so much less support from donors and therefore companies at all levels. And so again, really pioneering work by Savanna Circuit, and very important here. And ultimately, again, the last point I'd make is almost all the cold chain that's seen is on the large scale commercial side of things, which really is being driven, as again, we all know, by the export economies, exporting produce from, for example, Kenya, homegrown, selling produce to England to reach supermarket shelves, direct, without any particular benefits to local people or smallholder farmers, other than local people being employed as day laborers to work for large multinationals. So what we can really start to see here is the use of modern technologies and innovative business models to really truly be inclusive, to support local development through harnessing innovative modern energy and technologies. Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be working with Savanna Circuit, and look out for the outcomes of the work we'll be achieving together with Efficiency for Access. Thank you very much. Back to you.